Okay, I'm just curious. When was the first time you ever heard the word divination? I mean, I think I had heard it, but I don't know that I had ever really seen it, heard it used until it was in a Harry Potter movie, maybe. But what is divination really, and how do we use it? Welcome back to Soulful Wanderings, the space where we search for meaning in everyday life and honor the lessons that help us grow. I'm Heather and I'm your host. And before we get started, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. And you can also head over to our socials and follow us there. And all of that information will be in the show notes. So, divination. I really did first hear it in a Harry Potter movie, or the first time, that it kind of registered. And I went, what is that word? And of course, the instructor in the movie was a very stereotypical vision of what a seer would look like, maybe the way a gypsy or someone similar would look in movies. She was all beads and shawls and speaking in that weird, floaty, symbolism-filled vocabulary. So I looked up the handy-dandy definition, and according to dictionary.com, divination is the practice of seeking hidden knowledge, foretelling the future, or uncovering secrets through supernatural, occult, or magical means. Okay, here's the thing. To me, it just means being psychic. So I decided to look up psychic, see what that meant. Again, dictionary.com says being psychic means having an apparent mental ability to perceive information beyond the normal physical senses, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, or future prediction. They said if you use it as a noun, a person sensitive to non-physical forces, telepathy, or the future, also called a medium or clairvoyant. As an adjective, mind/soul. It's things relating to the human psyche, mind, or mental phenomena, e.g., psychic energy. So maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but when I talk to a quote-unquote psychic, they may or may not be using tools to help them with their reading. I've seen people who use tools, though, and they will proclaim vehemently that they are not psychic. Okay. So when you're using the tools of divination, aren't you using your intuition at the same time? Okay, so let's look for a second at what is intuition. Again, I love dictionary.com. Intuition is the ability to understand, know, or decide something immediately without using conscious reasoning, logic, or hard evidence. I mean, we're circling the same wand here, are we not? The truth is, we as humans have been looking for signs or for guidance since really the beginning of time, right? Even if you count things like the Bible, there's no real instruction manual per se as to how to do life. And even if you look at things like a Bible, those are left up to interpretation. So we often find ourselves seeking guidance or maybe validation. Was that the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? I think we're all looking for that and have been since probably the beginning of time. But let me ask you this too. How many of you literally kind of physically recoiled when I said the word psychic? You're thinking, I read tarot cards, but I am not psychic. But why? Is it a taboo word? Is it that people just don't understand it? Is it that it's associated with negative things? I mean, it's a label to be sure, and often not considered a good one. I'll concede that. Often you're automatically considered a witch. And I mean, once upon a time, we know that that label, how that ended for many folks. So I get it. It's a hard word. It's a hard word for me to say. But why is psychic such a bad thing to be? Okay, so enter divination. There's several tools of divination. You have tarot cards, oracle cards. People use so many things. There's pendulums, runes, charms, bones, candle wax, candle flames, scrying. Oh my gosh, there's more, but I don't think we need a whole list here. You get the gist of what I'm saying, right? And generally how you'll see this work is someone pulls a card, or you are the one doing it, and you pull a card and you immediately have a reaction. Because in many of these tools, the items have a meaning. Tarot's a great example. The numbers have a certain symbolism. If you get this number, it means this thing. The cups, pentacles, all those things, those have a meaning that the reader of the cards most likely knows. So, if you get a 3 of cups, then that means something based in tarot. And they're already kind of getting a hit on what that relates to. But then they use their intuition to kind of finish that thought. It's not just, oh, you got a 3 of cups, that's what this means. They have to go further in depth into that reading and what they're getting. And again, like I said, they pull the card and they're probably getting an immediate reaction of what it means to them. Immediately in their head, they're going, okay, well, this means this, or this person is probably going through this. And again, it's then for that particular client. Same thing with charms. I have a friend that works with charms, and she's, oh my gosh, she's so good at it. And so when she pulls a charm for you, often she will connect with that charm, and what it kind of obviously means. Sunshine. If you get a sun, what does that mean to most people? But it may also represent something to that person, the reader, that starts to give them a hint of what to say and what this will mean for their client. Oh, well, to me, a sun means bright and sunny and happy. And so maybe that equates to what it is that you need to tell your client. And the rest of it is intuition. Like I said, you start to kind of allow whatever messages are coming into your head. And I think you're associating it with the charm in your hand or the card in your hand, but it's your intuition telling you. And here's the reality. 2 readers could look at the same card or charm and interpret it differently. But I would bet money that even if they deliver a different message to the same client, that it will resonate with that client in the way that it's supposed to. Do you know what I mean? They may go about the message differently, but I bet the message is similar. Or even if it's not that similar, it's both probably still things that the client needs to hear. So again, there are several types of tools, and you kind of can use them in different ways, but at the end of the day, it's about what the tool tells you, how you interpret the tool, and then really using your intuition to kind of get the rest of that message that you need to hear. So question, do the tools give us the answer, or do they help us hear what we already know? So basically, the tool gives your intuitive mind something to interact with. And okay, I'm going to say this gently because I really do mean it gently. Is the tool a crutch? Not necessarily, but maybe. For someone that's learning to recognize their intuition, it can be more like training wheels or a language. Eventually, you might realize that you knew what you thought the card was going to say before you ever flipped it. Or you ask a pendulum a question and you actually know the answer before it ever moves. And it kind of becomes validation while you learn to trust yourself. So that kind of leads me to another question. Were the cards or charms or whatever you've chosen, were they talking to me? Or was I finally giving myself permission to listen? Like, I've asked myself those same questions, okay, as I've gone through and I've used these tools for various things. I mean, I admit, I also use them frequently for speed. Maybe you're at some kind of show where you're offering readings and you have people coming back to back, and it's easier to trust yourself. Sometimes relying fully on downloads to come, it can take a minute for me at least. Because it'll depend on my focus, my environment, my hydration level. Am I tired? Am I hungry? am I anxious for some reason? And the tools kind of make it easier and, dare I say, safer, so that I'm not kind of second guessing myself. And I'll find myself frequently trying to figure something out, and I probably know the answer. I've probably already kind of gotten a download or gotten the answer, but I'll pick up a pendulum and do a yes or no. I'll just ask Creator, okay, just tell me yes or no. Or if I've kind of gotten into my own head a lot and created my own confusion, I will, I'll go get a deck of cards and, ask my question and pull a card. And it is always the thing I originally thought, probably trying to talk myself out of, or something that I'm nervous about doing. So I'm going, oh, is that really what the answer was? And yes, it was. But maybe that's really the point of some of the tools, that they remove some of the pressure, because it's one thing to sit across from someone and kind of take a deep breath and, get yourself grounded and then say, okay, I'm just going to tell you what I'm getting. That could, for me, like I said, that could take a minute. It's another thing entirely to say, okay, what kind of question would you like answered today? And to turn over a card and have somewhere to begin to have this conversation. There's something that's in front of you. It's an image, it's a number, it's a symbol, it's a word, whatever it is, but it's something for your conscious brain to kind of grab onto while your intuitive brain starts doing whatever the weird little thing it is that it does. And I think that's why tools can be so helpful, especially when we're learning and just getting started out. Anyway, that's why I think that tools can be helpful, especially when you're starting out and you're learning. And really at any point, if you feel like you need that, then it's great to have those tools. And also, I want to make sure I make a distinction here. Using your intuition doesn't mean that you have to start calling yourself a psychic. I'm not handing out name tags at the door here. You're good, and maybe psychic is your profession or an identity to you. Or maybe it's a word that you're not really comfortable with. And you know what? Either one of those is okay. No one is saying anything that you have to do here. What I'm questioning is whether we've created these really firm lines between psychic ability, intuition, and divination, when maybe those lines aren't quite as firm as we think they are. And look, some people haven't created lines at all, but some have, and I guess I'm just kind of bringing up something for us to consider. Because, okay, think about what happens when you pull a card for yourself. Before you ever look up the meaning in the little book that came with the deck, what catches your attention? Maybe there's a person standing in the corner of the card that you never noticed before. Maybe it's a color. Maybe it's one word in the description. You know how sometimes often they have, especially oracle cards, they'll have some words at the bottom. And maybe there's a word in that description that just hits you like, oh, that's it. That's what I've been trying to figure out. And so therefore your immediate reaction is, oh, I know exactly what this is about. But where did that come from? You could say it's your intuition. You could say it's your subconscious making connections. You could say it's psychic information. You could say spirit, creator, God, your guide, your higher self, whatever language works within your belief system. But maybe it's one of them that's trying to use that card to get your attention. And maybe we don't have to know exactly which one it is. Maybe we just need to pay attention. Because here's where I think divination gets really interesting. We tend to think of it as fortune telling, right? What's going to happen? Am I going to get the job? Is this relationship going to work out? When will I meet someone? What's coming next? And sure, people absolutely use divination that way. But I actually think some of its greatest value is in asking a different kind of question. Not tell me what's going to happen, because let's be honest, things can change. The universe likes to be funny, right? And give us answers in a way that's still vague. Or because of the way we asked it's not what we really think is going to happen. Because my point is, sometimes those questions lead to misleading answers, right? So maybe instead we ask, what am I not seeing? What do I need to pay attention to? What energy am I bringing into this situation? What do I already know that I'm afraid to admit? Now, we're not necessarily trying to predict our lives. We're having a conversation with ourselves, and maybe with something beyond ourselves, depending on what you believe. And that is something I think almost anyone can experiment with. Look, you don't have to buy a $70 tarot deck. You don't have to know what every card means. You don't need a crystal ball, and you definitely don't need a shawl. Grab an oracle deck if you have one. Pull one card. But before you open the guidebook, look at it. What do you notice first? How does it make you feel? What thought immediately pops into your head? Does it remind you of something happening in your life? And here's the hard part. Don't immediately explain your reaction away. Okay? Notice it. Then read the guidebook. And you might be surprised by what you picked up on before anyone told you what the card was to, quote unquote, supposed to mean. And you can do that really with any divination tool. The tool itself may change, but you're practicing the same thing. You're noticing, you're listening, you're learning what your intuition feels like. And over time, maybe the tool becomes less about getting an answer and more about creating a space where you're willing to hear one. Which brings me back to the question I asked earlier. Are the cards talking to us, or are they giving us permission to listen? And I don't know that I have a definitive answer to that. And actually, I kind of like that I don't. Because maybe divination isn't really about predicting the future at all. Maybe it's another way humans have found to make the invisible a little more visible. To give our intuition a language. To ask a question and then get quiet enough to notice what comes back. So next time you pull a card or watch a candle flame or pick a charm or reach for whatever tool speaks to you, pay attention to what happens before you start looking for the right interpretation. You might know more than you think you do. And you don't have to call yourself psychic. You don't have to call it magic. You don't have to call it anything. Just stay curious enough to listen.